we've certainly come a long way. I think we're just going to keep improving. The more we're together, the more we're talking about football, the more we're trying to be on the same page, the better it is. And we got a big test this weekend. One of the great teams in the NFL, and consistently been one of the great teams for a long time. And we're going to have to go play a great football game.
Tom Brady talking about his team and the looming showdown against the New Orleans Saints, who have beaten the Buccaneers twice this year. But, Peter, Game 1 was way back in Week 1 when Tom Brady – I still remember the first shot from that game on the late afternoon window of the first Sunday, and you see Tom Brady in a Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform for the first time. And even though you've known for months it's going to happen, it was jarring. And the whole thing had to be jarring for him. And they gave him a decent game. He scored the first touchdown of the day, a rushing touchdown, and it wasn't a blowout by any means. Then they get blown out Week 9, and now they get together in what will be game number 18 for Tom Brady with the Buccaneers. The full season has been played. This is now year 2. He knows this offense. They know him. And the X factor for this one, Peter, Antonio Brown, he's in game speed, game shape, ready to go. And the last time he played the Saints, it was in the Superdome. Well, the last time he played in the Superdome against the Saints, because he did face them in Week 9, but in the Superdome for the Steelers, his last game with Pittsburgh, 14 catches, 185 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So if Antonio Brown is indeed in game shape, and if he hasn't lost much in 2 years, that's going to be a potent weapon. So this is just a very different team than the Buccaneers team that the Saints beat twice earlier this year, and it's been a long time since the last time they met.
Mike, I'm going to tell you why you were on to something in analyzing this game. And I'm going to take you back to that Super Bowl when Tom Brady engineered the 28-3 comeback to beat the Atlanta Falcons in overtime. And a week after that game, I sat with Tom Brady for, 90 minutes or so in Montana, of all places. And I asked him flat out, I said, some of your throws in overtime were just fabulous, because what he did in overtime and late in the fourth quarter, if you remember this absolute run-of-the-mill receiver they had that year named Chris Hogan, okay? And he threw these back shoulder passes to Chris Hogan. Like, everybody on the Falcons kept running. Chris Hogan stopped, turned around, and came back for the ball on 3 separate passes late in that game. And I asked Tom Brady specifically, I said, you and Chris Hogan, basically, how about Chris Hogan winning this game and are really helping to win this game? It looked like you two guys were the only people in the stadium who knew what you were about to do. And he said to me the following words, Peter, 122 practices. So when you hear this little cliche fest, or what you think is a cliche fest, at the soundbite that we just played at the top of this hour, well, we're getting better together. We get better every day, all that stuff. That's not a cliche to Tom Brady. He believes that in his heart, that he is going to be better on Sunday in this game because of all the practice time he's had with Scotty Miller, with Chris Godwin, with Mike Evans, with Antonio Brown, with Cameron Brate. He's going to be better, and they're going to be better. So I do think it's a different team on Sunday that the Saints are going to have to beat.
And I think the fact that the Saints won the first 2 games puts so much more pressure on them. And that second one came so easily. It reminded me a lot of what happened with the Browns and the Steelers on Sunday night, where it's just an avalanche, and before you know it, the game's over. If it doesn't go easily for the Saints early on, if they find themselves in a real fight, that's going to make them a little shaky. And the Saints are the team that has had the heartbreaking loss in the postseason, Peter, 3 straight years now. And I don't care what anyone says. You are going to have coaches, players, trainers, everyone thinking, or trying not to think, but having this nagging sense somewhere in their souls, here it comes. Here it comes. It's going to happen again. Some way, somehow, it's going to happen again. And, yeah, I think this is the worst possible time to get the Buccaneers with Tom Brady because they've had so much time together. And the method to the madness from Bruce Arians earlier this year when he's calling guys like Tom Brady out, well, what does it do? It pushes them to get better, and they've gotten better, and they've hit their stride. Coming out of their bye week, they've been great. And but for that first half when they were shut out by the Falcons, well, they still turned it around and kicked their butts, so it was a positive. But they've been great, and they're going to be very, very tough to beat on Sunday night, even though the Saints have beaten them twice before. Drew Brees turns 42 today. Happy birthday, Drew Brees. And look, no one expects Tom Brady to retire after this season, but that's the other element that adds to this game for the Saints. This may be it for Drew Brees. And I think people on the sideline, people in the locker room, they're going to be very aware of that. And I don't know if that's a positive or a negative, that a loss means that's it for Drew.
Here's the thing, Mike. Drew Brees, 15 years in New Orleans. When he landed in New Orleans to sign his contract and was taken from the airport to the Saints facility, he passed all sorts of gigantic refuse in the road, cars up on blocks. The city was a ruined city. That spring, the mayor of New Orleans, when I was in there to do a story on the Saints before they drafted Reggie Bush, the day that I was there, for a couple of days, I was there. One day, President Bush came into the city to the lower Ninth Ward, and Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis were there, and it was all about, and Loomis and Bush and Payton were together. We got to get this done. The mayor was there. So the mayor, Ray Nagin, says to me that day, he says, I just hope that the Saints can stay here for one more year at least so we can get on our feet. And do you know why they've been there and why now they are a rock-solid franchise in the city of New Orleans? They're there in an overriding way because of the contributions of Drew Brees. Now, there's a lot of people. Loomis has built this, the foundation of the franchise. Peyton has been such a great coach. They've had great players. But I would say the one guy who's done this, who's most responsible, is the great play of Drew Brees. And Mike, I know this. If Drew Brees retires at the end of this year, which we all assume that he will, he is not going to want his last game ever in the city that he helped rebuild, in the city that if he ran for mayor, he would win unanimously, in the city that is his adopted city that he's raised his kids in for half of every year, for the last decade plus. He is not going to want his last game in the Superdome to be a loss. What does that mean? I think it means something. I don't know how much it'll mean, especially because the guy on the other side is named Tom Brady. But I do think it's meaningful.
I think it means we're going to have one hell of a game on Sunday night. That's what it means, because something's got to give here. They both can't advance. And it's either going to be an extremely disappointing end to Tom Brady's first season with the team other than the Patriots. And it's hard to say getting to the Final Eight is disappointing, but this guy's always driven to get to the top of the mountain, and we've seen it so many times. For crying out loud, he's played 9 Super Bowls in 20 years. But it's going to be, whatever the aftermath, it's going to be more devastating than the usual playoff loss. And the usual playoff loss at this level is devastating. But, the thing is, the Saints have been there and done that and seen that and lived that. And can they overcome that? Minneapolis Miracle, the anniversary was 3 years ago yesterday. The debacle in the NFC Championship game with the non-call of pass interference from 2 years ago in the Superdome. Last year in the Superdome, the loss to the Vikings in overtime with the subtle but very obvious push by Kyle Rudolph to secure the game-winning touchdown, uncalled offensive pass interference. Man, it's, look, they got their Super Bowl win, even though it was a long time ago. They desperately would love to get another one, but I had thought going into the playoffs that the Buccaneers' path to the Super Bowl was easiest if they could avoid the Saints. I'm now thinking maybe the Saints' path to the Super Bowl would be the easiest if they could avoid the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, we've both made great arguments in the last 7 minutes about why you don't want to play both teams right now. The Bucs, because Brady, now having gotten to know all the receivers on this team, very interesting. I was talking to somebody in the Bucs organization 2 days ago and said, hey, what do you think? And just opening the conversation. He goes, I've been thinking a lot about this. And in the first game of this season, I can tell you, and I'm not kidding around, you still had some guys, his receivers, who were in awe of Tom Brady, who really couldn't believe that Tom Brady was their quarterback. We have no explanation for the second game. The 38-3 loss, it was a total abomination. Nothing. But now everybody on this team doesn't look at Tom Brady as a trophy. They look at him as a teammate. And so that's just another way to suggest that how do you not call this the game of the weekend? I mean, I think it's just an absolutely tremendous, it's tremendous.
And that array of weapons, just incredible to think what he came from in New England and what he has between Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller, Rob Gronkowski, for crying out loud, Cameron Brake to be that guy that no one's paying attention to because they're so focused on everyone else. He'll get you if he gets a chance. And then the running game, Leonard Fournette stepped up last week when Ronald Jones re-injured his quad in pregame warmups. And the offensive line. That's the other thing too, Peter. The Saints have a great defense. They got a great pass rush, but that offensive line was so good against the Washington Murderers Row. They give Tom Brady time to throw the ball down the field. We had the numbers earlier this week. He was 22 of 40 against the Washington football team. He averaged over 17 yards per completion and 9.5 per attempt. Even though he completed almost only half of his passes, he still averaged 9.5 yards per attempt. He's getting the time to get the ball down the field.
And that's really going to matter this week because obviously the Saints are really going to try to pressure him. They've got a very physical secondary. And so it's going to be a great test for Brady. But Mike, you mentioned at the beginning of your first statement about this game, you talked about Antonio Brown. And look, Antonio Brown has not done one thing all team. Now there've been this team. Now he got charged with that weird thing at his condo complex around Hollywood, which is on the other side of the state. But that wasn't when he was with the Bucs. And I've been told that he has been beyond a model citizen. And it is all because it's like Brady's his dad. And Brady's basically told him, look, I don't know the exact words, but I'm sure that Brady has told him, look, this is it. It's a last chance saloon, buddy. This is your, if you're going to have somebody like me stick up for you, and come into a place, if you somehow, some way mess this up, you'll never have another chance again. And I think he knows it. And I think, Mike, don't underestimate what his best behavior is saying to the league office. It's saying that I have drawn a line of demarcation in my life. I am not that guy anymore. I am not the Pittsburgh guy anymore. I'm not the Oakland guy anymore. I've made a new life for myself, so do not kick me out of this game. I honestly believe that he's using this to show the NFL, I can be a good guy. Just look at me. And so I think he's been managed well by the Bucs, and I think he's been managed well by Tom Brady. And he also has reached the point where he realizes that he's got 2 strikes on him, and he's got a great pitcher on the mound. He can't screw up again.
And it's interesting to see what next year will bring, too. Chris Godwin due to become a free agent. It could be Mike Evans and Antonio Brown as the primary receivers next year when Tom Brady inevitably is back in Tampa Bay for a second season.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.